Hey everyone, it's Danielle, welcoming you back to another CaliFaces video. Darrell Dent was a young athlete with a bright future in Major League Baseball. Chosen third round in the draft, he had the path to success laid out in front of him. But a series of bad decisions would lead him down a dark path into a life of stealing, robbing, and eventually masterminding one of the biggest jewelry heist gangs California has ever seen. Darrell Dent was born on May 26, 1977, in Inglewood, California. He grew up in what was known then as South Central LA, a neighborhood infamous for its gang violence. But Darrell's parents were determined to keep him off the streets and out of trouble. So at just 4 years old, they enrolled him in Little League Baseball. Darrell's father and his uncle also played baseball when they were young, and both were standout players in high school. So it was clear from an early age that Darrell would follow in his family's footsteps. But when Darrell was 14, tragedy struck, when his father, who had always been his role model, committed suicide. In an LA Times 1995 interview, Darrell shared that at his father's funeral, he had made a promise to his dad that he would make him proud by making it to the big leagues. And by Darrell's freshman year, he was on his way to keeping that promise, being ranked by Baseball America as the 20th best high school prospect in the country. The Baltimore Orioles saw Darrell's potential too, and in 1995 they selected him in the third round of the amateur draft. Darrell was 18 years old. But very quickly, Darrell's baseball career took an unfortunate turn when he wasn't able to live up to the high expectations that come with being a pro baseball player. Adding to that, he began making decisions that would lead him straight into a life of crime. The same year he was drafted, he stole his roommate's Rolex and his checkbook. His roommate was also an Orioles baseball player, so it wasn't long before management uncovered a series of forgeries totaling $15,000 in checks that Darrell had written out to himself. When confronted, Darrell admitted to the crimes, and the Baltimore Orioles released him. Following his release from the Orioles, Darrell's life spiraled further out of control, and he was caught and arrested for stealing 2 vehicles in 2001. By 2011, Darrell's life of crime had expanded even more. He became involved in identity theft, forgery, and trafficking marijuana. But it wasn't until Darrell met Keith Walton, an alleged senior member of an Inglewood, California street gang, that his criminal life took a more serious turn. Darrell Dent and Keith Walton began organizing a series of high-profile robberies that targeted high-end watch stores. But Darrell and Keith didn't actually carry out any of the robberies. Instead, they put together a highly organized hierarchy, with themselves at the top, their lieutenants under them, and what they called foot soldiers at the bottom. Darrell and Keith would case luxury watch stores in the Southern California area and choose which stores would be robbed. Their lieutenants would recruit different men, many from local street gangs, and then supply them with guns, backpacks, sledgehammers, and ski masks. From 2015 to 2016, these men carried out 10 carefully planned and executed smash-and-grab daylight robberies, netting over $6 million in stolen watches. After each robbery, it was Darrell's job to fence the stolen goods, using his connections to resell the watches overseas, and then pay everyone involved in the robbery their cut. It would later come out, however, that most of the foot soldiers were not paid nearly what they were promised, typically receiving between $500 and $1,000 per robbery, while Darrell kept $10,000 to $50,000 for himself. In early 2016, the gang's activities started to attract the attention of a local detective who began tracking Darrell's car and slowly connecting him to the robberies. But what led to the gang's actual downfall is when one of their heists didn't go as planned, and they were forced to flee the scene, leaving behind their getaway car. Police found inside the car a handwritten list of the names of the 5 men involved in the robbery, along with each man's phone number. This led to a number of arrests, where one of the suspects gave up the names of all the individuals involved, including Darrell Dent.
Authorities finally have shut down this robbery ring. The good news is they have 9 suspects in custody. Bad news is they still don't know what happened to $6 million in Rolexes and high-end jewelry.
Facing mounting evidence against him and a threat of a lengthy prison sentence, Darrell Dent eventually agreed to cooperate with authorities, testifying against his former associates, including Keith Walton, who was sentenced to 55 years in prison. Darrell's testimony also helped convict 8 other members of the watch heist ring, with each of them receiving 1 to 40 years in prison. Darrell's decision to cooperate with the prosecution allowed him to seek leniency, and today he is no longer in prison. In 2018, GQ writer Amy Wallace dubbed Darrell and his gang the Time Bandits of Southern California, securing Darrell Dent's place in history, not as a Major League Baseball player, but as the man who organized one of the largest jewelry smash-and-grab robbery rings California has ever seen.